Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Anything Flows. Today we're at Studio Y with Alexis, and I'm Adrienne. So today I wanted to interview her. I wanted to be here at the studio because, as some of you know, I'm going to be starting to teach yoga here, and your class was probably one of the first classes that I took when I came here. And I brought my mom, my sister. We came on Valentine's Day, me and my sister. So I've really enjoyed your classes and like following you on Instagram. So follow her on Instagram, Alexis Solar Plexus, just like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'll let her introduce herself and talk about we'll both talk about our experiences with yoga, with the studio. We'll talk a lot about tips for beginners, because as I've kind of talked to people about yoga, a lot of people kind of seem maybe intimidated, and maybe that's something that you've come across too. But we'll talk about tips for people who are just getting started with yoga, have kind of no idea where to start, and what kind of benefits you can expect, what we've kind of felt in our journey, and we'll just kind of see where this conversation flows. So
Nice. Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here to talk about yoga with you.
Yeah, I'm excited. So just tell us a little bit about what got you started with yoga, how you got into the studio.
Yeah, it's been a journey. It's been a blessing in my life. I've been practicing for over 10 years. So I started in my early 20s, and I came into it much like everyone else as a physical practice. Like, how can I do a forearm stand?
Yeah.
How can I put my feet above my head?
The fun stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Those things that kind of just are like, okay, this is kind of a fun, different challenge physically for me. Then that progressed into something more. I moved to Austin, Texas when I was about 22, and they have a big yoga scene there.
Yeah.
So I was able to kind of dive deep into taking public classes every single day of the week. So many different teachers, so many different styles. And it just kind of opened up this new world for me. Going through my entire 20s, I just felt every time I was having a hard day, feeling overwhelmed, sad, confused, I would go to my yoga mat, I would take a class, and I would feel different afterwards. I always felt different. It didn't matter what style of yoga. It didn't matter how bad my mood was. There was a shift afterwards. So I was like, what is this? This is something more here. This is not just physical. This is not just a workout. This is deeper. But I didn't really know how to put my finger on it. I was never a religious person growing up. I wasn't from a religious household, but I felt that there was a deeper calling there. So that was the journey. That was the start. I always admired yoga teachers. Some of the most amazing people in my life were yoga teachers. I just loved the inspiration. I loved how fun and creative they seemed. And I love that they kind of just put these little tidbits of information and sayings into their classes where I'd be like, you know what? I feel better about myself now.
Mm-hmm.
So I sought out a teacher training, and then COVID hit and everything shut down. And I was like, wow, I feel really lost without my community. You know, I didn't have my job. I didn't have my yoga studio. I didn't have any of my old routine. And I feel like we all just got put on timeout.
Yeah.
I had to move back here to Arizona, which was wonderful. My family welcomed me with open arms. I moved back in with my parents and kind of did a full mental reset, did a teacher training throughout that time. And it was the best thing that could have happened to me. So that's a little bit about my journey.
That's awesome. Yeah. And in Texas, I feel like, there is a lot, or in Austin at least, there is a big yoga presence. That's where Yoga with Adrienne is at. That's where my vinyasa practice, which is where I'm getting my 200 hours through, is they have their main studio.
Yeah.
So I would love to visit Austin and check out their classes.
You got to go. And Yoga with Adrienne owns the studio that I've done all my trainings through. So she has a big influence on the way I teach. The style in which we all teach with this studio is very much inclusivity and body conscious, being very positive self-regard. Everything is about nurturing thyself and, getting rid of the expectation of the asana having to look a certain way. Mm-hmm. And so that was exactly what I needed, because I was going to a lot of studios where it was about how you look in your Lululemons and how strong you can be and how long you can hold some crazy pose. And I knew I didn't want that for myself. It did feel dysregulating. It felt like vulnerable being in those settings, comparing myself to other women. And I was like, this isn't what I want for my teaching journey. This isn't what I want for my long-term practice. So practice yoga in Austin really, really kind of made that happen, where it wasn't about all those physical things.
Yeah. I love Yoga with Adrienne too. I think she's been a big influence on my journey. I remember when I first started doing yoga, I drew to her, obviously, because like I was like, oh, her name is Adrienne, like that's cool. So and then she had a blue healer who's exactly like my blue healer.
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's
I'm like,
awesome.
this is just like interesting. I'll do it. You know, I'll try it. You know, when I started, it was more because I was like, I want to just be stretching. Like I was a cheerleader in high school and college, and then when you end your athletic career, you don't really know like how to kind of keep going sometimes with the same activities and keeping like taking care of your body. So I was like, let's do yoga. I think that'll be really good just to keep me flexible, keep my body like healthy. And then kind of like you, I feel like I started to get more out of it than I expected, more than like beyond just the physical postures. And I didn't grow up religious at all either. And for me, like it's kind of helped me to understand something a little bit more deeper and connect with something. And I think like at the end of the day, it's like just connecting with myself, you know? So yeah, I love that, like that all of that has like brought us both here. So it's super cool. So what has been your like experience with the teacher training?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I did it during COVID and it was all on Zoom, which was lovely because it was like this tree of knowledge to lean on while we were weathering a storm of unpredictability. You know, we didn't know when things were going to open, people were getting sick. It was a lot of fear-driven rhetoric in our society. And we just kind of collectively, all the people in the teacher training came together and held space for each other. We would cry, we would practice, we would talk philosophy, we would talk anatomy, and it just gave me a direction. You know, yoga is kind of touching on what we were talking about with religion, and I know that can kind of like perk people's ears up in a way. Mm-hmm. And what I have to say is that like, it's not about a specific religion. It's not about Eastern, it's not about Western, it's about the science of all religion. Mm-hmm. There's nothing in yoga that will take away from your Catholic beliefs or your Christian beliefs or your Judea beliefs. Like there's a lot there that transcends all of it. So not being a very religious but a feeling spiritual person, mm-hmm. learning more about the philosophy and getting those guidelines really helped me in a vulnerable place in my life, because at that time I was kind of lost in who I was. Yeah. I was going through a divorce, which can feel very vulnerable. Mm-hmm. I had been pulled away from an entire life and community that I really did not want to leave. And so learning things like the yamas and the niyamas, which are principles of living, mm-hmm. helped me to kind of guide my boat in mm-hmm. a safe direction. So there's things like non-stealing, non-violence, truthfulness, discipline. These were things that were offered in the yoga philosophy but didn't feel forced on me. Mm-hmm. So I really kind of guided my life in a positive direction. And with a teacher training, I have to say, whether someone wants to be a public teacher or they just want to grow themselves as a human being and how they see the world, I always recommend doing a teacher training. You'll never regret the information. You'll never regret the insight. And then, like you were saying, the personal connection, like this mm-hmm. love that you cultivate for yourself and this positive like outlook you get from life is worth every single ounce of money and time and effort.
Yeah, for sure. The program that I'm doing, it's my vinyasa practice, and it was only like $250, and it's all self-pay, so it's super affordable. And I could totally see how like people who maybe don't want to teach in a setting like in a studio or in general would still get a lot of like value out of it. Like I learned about the yamas and the niyamas, and that was really, really interesting too, because you're learning about how to treat other people, but also how to treat yourself. You know, like nonviolence towards other, but also nonviolence towards yourself. And if you're, you know, critical of yourself or talking down of yourself, like that's not practicing yoga, you know? Yes. So not that there's a wrong or a right way to do it, but I think it's about kind of always like checking in with yourself and figuring out like where you're kind of putting your energy, what's taking your energy. Like one of the things that I really liked learning about was the Chitta Vritti. And how like that like kind of like it helps you to understand a lot of like it literally translates to mental fluctuations, and that's kind of how like our minds are. Like we're thinking about this thing from the past or thinking about this thing that's coming up, and it's very hard for us to like always come back to the present moment. But with yoga and these mindfulness practices, you're helping to kind of quiet those a little bit more, helping to understand, like, is this perception? Is this maybe like, am I giving this a story based on my past experiences, or is this truth? So I think that helps you to kind of get a little bit more clarity and like let go of what is causing maybe a lot of that mental fluctuation and like causing your own suffering, so that way you can focus on just the truth and aligning yourself with that. So there's a lot of value in teacher training, even if you don't want to be a teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like the life lessons, like you're saying, it's not like a forced set of rules. It's just a little checklist. Like, hey, why am I feeling off today?
Mm-hmm.
Well, am I being truthful? Am I talking down to myself? Am I stealing? And it's not just physically stealing material things,
Mm-hmm.
but am I stealing someone's time?
Yeah.
Am I distracting somebody? Am I distracting myself or allowing myself to be distracted? Am I keeping something longer than I should? So there's like these like little subtle nuances where you kind of just are like, oh shoot, I am doing that,
Mm-hmm.
For me, journaling alongside of it.
Yeah.
Yes. I know journaling can feel like a lot, but it really does. There's that one thing on your mind that will not go away, that ruminating thought. Writing it down, and then I read it back to myself 3 times, just processes it out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can move on. Because you're right, this chittavritti narodha, like this constant mind, this going over it over and over in it, that's mental health.
Mm-hmm.
That is what we're all suffering with right now, especially because we're attached to our screens and we are allowed to be obsessed with ourselves. It's almost condoned in our society at this point. We're allowed to think about what someone said to us over and over. We can reread the text message to ourselves, and it creates such a disturbance.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't just affect the mind, it affects the body, your health, your stress levels, your willingness to connect to others. What I think is so crazy is that we're in such a hyper-connected society, but we're so far removed from one another. And I think with yoga, it brings you back to see the suffering in yourself that you're causing, but also seeing that there's suffering in others, and that at one point we all are the same. Like
Right.
we're all just trying to figure it out. We're all just trying to keep ourselves from getting swept away. In the Bhagavad Gita, they talk about the senses, the mind being these horses that are pulling your chariot. And if you don't have control over the senses, then these horses are going to run you around and you're going to get caught away with it. But you should be the conductor. You should be the one saying, you know what? My craving sense wants this. I'm going to pull it back in.
Mm-hmm.
My undisciplined sense wants this. I'm going to pull it back in. And it's not a negative. It's just that awareness is half the battle.
Exactly. I think some people can feel a little bit intimidated with checking in with themselves like that. And I think you have to remind yourself that you have to come from like a non-judgmental place. Like you said, like we're all experiencing very similar things, and we're all kind of the same. And having compassion for others means also having compassion for ourselves, and just understanding that you can use that failure or that situation to help better yourself. And you were kind of meant to go through that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to come out the other side, how you are now. And that's the point. You want to come out of it evolving and changing for the better.
Right. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, and that's okay.
Yeah.
We don't have to pretend like life is perfect. I think it's another misconception. It's like putting this narrative on like, oh, nothing's wrong in my life, I'm good. No, I think the more vulnerable you can be, the more authentic you can be, the more relatable you are. Because like people just want to be seen, held, and know that they're not in this alone. We're all in this together. We're all navigating the waters. And so, yeah, there's a lot to be said about community too.
Yeah. So when did you start teaching at Studio Y?
I started in 2021. So I graduated my teacher training, and they're like, most people don't teach right away. And I was like, okay.
I haven't even finished mine, and I'm already teaching this one.
In a town like Austin, there's 900 yoga teachers.
Oh my God.
In a town like Yuma, there's maybe 30. I got really lucky. My network is really lovely, and I was invited to teach here. Katie, actually, who does sound bowls.
Oh, nice.
Her and I met through a mutual friend. She's like, hey, I think you guys would hit it off. She's like, let's do yin yoga and sound bath. I was like, yin yoga? I'm like, no, I'm vinyasa. Like, that's boring.
Yeah.
She's like, let's try it. And it was amazing. Literally the best physical movement and combination of sound healing, which we can touch on that later. But she was like, I think you should apply at Studio Y. And I knew a couple people here. I'd taken classes here. I was like, it's a beautiful space. It's literally like a hidden gem of Yuma. And I was like, I don't know. And she's like, no, you're ready. And Amanda right away, the owner of the studio, who's an amazing human being, just so generous and so lovely, was like, yeah, I would love for you to teach here. So I got popped right into a hot yoga class on a Tuesday.
Oh my God, that's
Sound familiar? And it was amazing, intimidating, exciting, exhilarating. You know, there's so much more creativity that goes into being a yoga teacher than I ever thought possible. You're not just creating the playlist for the music, but you're thinking about the Shri, which is these tidbits of information that you can sprinkle in. You're thinking about how the body's going to move and what we need to work for, thinking about the seasons that we're in and how we can use our poses to help the nervous system instead of disrupt it. And then it just kind of grew from there. I said yes to Lori's paddleboard yoga. So I got certified to do paddleboard yoga. That was amazing. I love water, and I think that's a really just fun way to enjoy outside meditating on a paddleboard.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing?
It was amazing.
It's so good.
I was like, oh, it's, you know, yoga on a paddleboard. It'll be like a challenge. Cool. It was a challenge for sure, but it was also like really nice and relaxing. Like, I'm a Cancer, so I'm a water sign, so I feel like that maybe had something to do with it, but it was a lot of fun. And then she does Kundalini yoga, so it's a little bit more deeper, you know? Right.
Which what I love about the studio is that there's not just one style of yoga that we're offering. You know, there's other branch chain studios where the training is done through the studio and you do their regimen, you do their routine, and it's very much like cut and paste. Here, you can show up with whatever style of yoga you want to teach, and we will openly, open arms, feel like give that experience. And so that's what I love about Studio Y, is that there's this creative unending. It's like such an honor to be able to use this space to express myself, but also to offer more to community than the run-of-the-mill type of classes. And that's what you'll see here too as a teacher, that you can come up with the creative, weird thing that you want to do on a weekend. Hey, I want to do this kind of workshop. And Amanda will be like, oh yeah, okay, that sounds great.
Yeah.
And like with the paddleboard yoga and with all these different variations that we're doing, like just say yes to it. There's no reason to say like, nope, I'm this style of yoga teacher. There's no one style. There is no, yoga's over 5,000 years old. You know, we're not reinventing the wheel here, but we are opening ourselves to receive whatever is coming towards us. Like you said, all of this happens for a reason, and we get put in these positions because we're meant to be here.
Right. Yeah. I know. That's how I feel. That's why I really like this studio. It's because I can go in and I know that like the teachers really care about teaching and connecting with their students and in their own unique way. And like, it's going to benefit the student in a unique way as well. I've gone to, you know, studios in Phoenix that are a little bit more like franchisey, like Core Power or like Box Yoga. I don't think Box Yoga is a franchise, but still kind of like not as creative. I think a lot of it is kind of just like going in, and there is a little bit more, I think, like how the studio maybe wants them to do things, but here it feels different, so I like that.
Yeah, this is like a grassroots studio. I feel like this is a come as you are, come here because you need to be here. You know, not to speak for others, but from what I've witnessed, people that show up here are on a healing journey, and they might just be starting their healing journey, and they don't know why they're drawn to it, but it's giving them something back. So kind of like going back to starting your yoga program and how you can get into this. I know it seems intimidating, and I know it seems like there's this preconceived notion that you have to be a certain way before you start, that you have to be, you know, a petite person that's really flexible and already like in shape, and that's absolutely not what it is. Like the stigma behind yoga that we've created in Western society is a little unfortunate because it can feel very non-inclusive. Places like Studio Y are wonderful because it's all about inclusivity. It's all about you are perfect just as you are. There is no need to do anything but be yourself. You don't have to buy $100 leggings to come to a class. Like, this is an authentic expression of who you are. So when it comes to taking your first class, like, I get it. I don't go to the gym that often because I get the most anxiety ever. It's very intimidating for me. And I can see where that would be applied in a studio.
Yeah.
You know, I could see where it's like, well, I've never done this. I don't know what these words are. I don't know how to move my body this way. But just know that there's never a bad way to do anything as long as you're keeping yourself safe. My big philosophy is that if you're practicing yoga today, you want to be able to practice yoga for the rest of your life. So finding sustainability, meaning do the stuff that you can do, and that's okay if you can't do everything.
Right. Yoga
is not a competitive sport. There's no black belt in yoga. There's no gold star. You're not going to win the yoga competition. There's nothing like that. I like to think of the phrase I heard from one of my favorite teachers. It's comparison is the thief of joy. And when you're comparing yourself to anything else, whether it's the person next to you or something you saw on Instagram, then you're taking away from your own joy and your own ability.
Right.
So just showing up, and the most important part is that you're breathing, is that you're taking time to be with yourself on your mat. You're creating a difference in your body just by being there. And with the teachers we have here, everybody is so friendly and so accommodating that you're not going to feel out of place. So I think just showing up is the part that's the hardest. Getting onto your mat, making the drive down, you know, unrolling it, that's the hardest part. Everything else will unfold in such a beautiful way. That's why they call it practice. You're constantly practicing. Whether you're doing it for a week or 50 years, you're still just practicing.
Exactly.
And every day it's going to feel different. Every day your body's going to feel different. And I think that's to just know that once you start, the journey is just beginning, and it's going to go on and on for you forever.
Yeah. No, you said a lot of really good things. I like that you talked about just kind of like meeting yourself where you're at, you know, and like this is just a practice. And you don't have to be, you know, flexible. You don't have to have the perfect alignment yet. But I think as you keep going, you get better. Like that's really the point of this. And for me, I think like that kind of mindset on the mat helps me outside of the mat too. You know, like I'm not going into my first day of work and being like, I'm going to, you know, have everything figured out. I'm not going to have any questions. I'm going to know exactly what to do. Like that's just not realistic for any kind of situation, you know? So I think kind of taking that mindset of I'm going to show up how I am, you know, because that's perfect how it is, you know, and I'm going to have, you know, a good intention with what I'm doing and learn from this experience to do better the next time, because that's all you really can do, you know. You can't compare yourself to other people and maybe what that other person before you in that position at that job did, you know, because you're not the same person. You have different experiences and you're coming with different things to the table.
Yep. And it's cumulative, you know. Every time you come, you're going to feel a little different. What I love about it is that it's like a check-in with yourself. How's my physical body today? How's my emotional body today? Yeah. What's my mental state like? And what does my spirituality think? PEMS. It's like a nice way to kind of check in with yourself. And then the other thing is that, like, because it kind of cultivates over time and you get more and more the more you do it, it's very empowering. It really is. It's not about doing a crazy pose because you want somebody to see you doing it. It's saying, you know what, I worked towards this and I got here and I feel so strong in my body. And then other days you're gonna be like, you know what, I don't need to do all that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let myself rest today. I'm gonna take time to nourish myself with calm energy. So there's like taking it off the mat, like you're saying, we learn these body mind connection is more than just stuff you do in a yoga studio or at a gym. That's stuff you take home with you. It's how you treat your family. It's how you show up in your relationships. And it's how you can be honest with yourself. You're curating this beautiful connection to self, and that whether that be balance, physical balance yields mental balance. You know, it's resilience. I can stay in this and keep breathing. I can stay in anything and keep breathing in my life, you know? And that's what I've gotten for myself. You know, I can only speak from my own experience, but like I've got issues with self-esteem. I've got issues with anger. I've got issues with sometimes just feeling blatant confusion about what my life is about. But yoga brings me back to saying, you know what? I don't have to have it all figured out right now.
Exactly.
I don't have to be a version of myself that I think I need to be. I am great, and I'm doing my best just as I am.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there is a downside of doing yoga. And people are intimidated. Why do you think is it maybe because like, maybe that comparison, you think?
Yeah. And you know, it's such a conundrum for me because it's like you're wearing tight clothes. It's a lot of vulnerability. I think that's really what it is. Or like, well, I haven't been one of those people before. What makes me feel like that imposter syndrome that we can talk about.
Yeah. And like outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah. And you know, it sucks because, I mean, it doesn't suck, but it is a thing where yoga is used as a marketing tool now. They use it in advertisements, and it's usually very lean people doing really bendy things. That's hypermobility. That's not something that yoga brought them. That's just who they are, and great. But I think it just plants this seed in somebody's head of like, well, I don't look like that person, so I can't be that person.
Right.
You know, and I think once we take that stigma away, that nobody's here to judge you, nobody's here to criticize you, and nobody's going to force you to do anything you don't want to do. Exactly. I'm a big proprietor of autonomy, making choices for yourself that are best for you. I've worked in the food service industry for a long time, and when people are like, I have a special diet, I said, absolutely you do. What can I do to help you stay in that alignment with your diet? Because what we put in our bodies is just as sacred as the religions that we practice and who we spend our time with. You know, these are all very, very intimate things that we do for ourselves. Same thing with moving the body and being a physically mobile person, whether that mobility feels like moving through cement or like gliding through honey, you have to know that it's not like a end result of being somewhere, you know.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, for somebody who, because that, with my new job, I mentioned that I'm a yoga teacher, and like we're wanting to do classes with all the locations that I'm at and offer that to the employees to just promote more wellness at work. And I think yoga is perfect because it's not like you're doing a CrossFit class and you have to, you know, go really hard, and that can be intimidating in its own way. But I think it's a good thing for people because most people at work are stressed, or like, you know, who, you know, just most people in general, whether you're working, whether you're a mom, whatever, people are stressed, and calming down our nervous system, like leaning more into that rest and relaxation response and kind of getting out of that fight or flight is a really important thing. Like, especially when I'm coaching clients for nutrition, like we even use our nutrition to help us to get out of fight or flight. And people don't understand that like restricting yourself is activating that fight or flight. Your body thinks that you're in survival mode, that you're in a famine. It doesn't know that you're dieting. And so getting your body the nourishment that it needs to understand that, you know, we're getting that fuel, that energy, that recovery, and that these adaptations can happen, you know, those adaptations can happen, like weight loss or gaining muscle mass or whatever it is that you want to, you know, for your physical side. But even for performance or longevity, you know, like your nutrition plays a big role too. But yeah, with my work, we're trying to, you know, do some yoga classes, incorporate just some of that kind of activity as well. But I've with talking with people, they're kind of like, oh, I've done yoga, you know, I've done one class, I wasn't very flexible, you know, I don't know. It's kind of like that they're intimidated or they're uncomfortable. So like, what would you say to somebody who's like just getting started? Like, do you suggest like practicing at home? I usually tell people, you know, I send them videos of yoga with Adrienne, and I'm like, try this one, or like just use her, you know, her page is awesome. Like, she's got playlist of under 10 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, like a wide variety. She's got a calendar that you can follow along with every month. So, you know, the hardest part is just pressing play, you know, and rolling out your mat. And like you said, no one's going to force you to do anything, especially in your own home when you're practicing. Like, the hardest part is going to be pressing play, and you can just lay there. You know, you don't have to do the poses. You can, you know, just figure out, just feel into your body, have that time where you can check in with yourself, because probably throughout your day, you know, you're waking up, you're taking care of the kids, you're taking care of this, you're going to work, have all those responsibilities, got things going on after. Like, when are you checking in with yourself? you know? So I think that is like the biggest thing that I want people to kind of get out of yoga is like, this is not just an opportunity to like, you know, move your body, get, you know, the physical side of it, but also like check in with yourself and have that time with yourself to just listen, you know, non-judgmentally, what's going on, you know, let like question it a little bit, you know, is this the, you know, that mental fluctuation, is this perception, am I just creating stories around this, or is this truth, you know, and or, you know, what is the truth that's going to help me to kind of get out of that like mental suffering. So like for somebody who's just getting started, you know, they're intimidated by the poses or all that, like what do you think would help?
Yeah, no, you're making a lot of really awesome points. Thank you. I love it. That it is about just being with yourself. You know, we live in a hyper-stimulated society where we're constantly going, and we hardly take time for ourselves. And sometimes we have the hardest time resting. We have the hardest time slowing down. So if it's not about the physical poses, you know, if you're not wanting to do warrior two, you don't want to do a vinyasa where you're sun salutations and doing push-ups and plank pose and all that stuff, because you can hurt yourself doing that, especially if you're not ready for it.
Right.
Or if your mind is telling you no. Listen to that. Never forcing it, you know. What I would recommend is to do the more gentle styles of yoga, you know, like yin yoga, restorative yoga, a slow flow, so that you can check in with the body, but you can also downregulate the nervous system. There is a lot of power in the breath. Pranayama, prana, energy, breath, yama, discipline of. When we can use our breath, we can control the mind. It is a secret key into the nervous system. Just extending your exhalation for a couple cycles of breath will bring you into parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest state. So what I highly recommend is, if you're not about that physical practice, get into a yin class. Let your body rest. I call it the art of surrender. It's harder to be still than it is to do 90 different poses in an hour. It really is. It's hard for us to sit still these days. We have constant distraction. We're over caffeinated sometimes. We need to do something else for something. We're planning the list of what we need to do later. I mean, this is causing fatigue. Your allostatic load, your abilities to process stress, cannot handle it when you're constantly pushing the gas pedal all the way down. Take the foot off. It's okay to apply the brakes. I always say, give yourself permission to rest. Give yourself permission to be still. And practicing at home is wonderful, but some people are like, well, my kids, and then I'll get distracted, or I'll roll over and start playing on my phone. Coming to a class, especially in a beautiful space like here at Studio Y, it's like, guess what, honey? You have the hour and you have nowhere to be, nothing to do other than to breathe. And that can be so beneficial for the nervous system. It's better than doing 100 crunches. It's better than doing 90 squats. You know, what you can do is rest yourself. There's classes almost every day of the week where it promotes this. And I've been a big proprietor of like, we don't need to do hot yoga as much in the summertime. On an Ayurvedic level, you're already dysregulating your pitta. You don't need more. That's just your heat, that hot, that fieriness that we all have that gets extra stimulated living in the desert during the summertime.
I'm feeling that. Like recently, I'm like, this is just getting crazy.
Yes, it's irritating. I don't care who you are. It's exhausting and it's irritating. So doing a cooling, grounding practice. There's this thing called sattva, you know, it's balance. We want to take things that we're already experiencing and bring in the opposite. So if we're already hot, how can we do cooling, grounding practices? We're already going all the time. How can we slow ourselves down in a way where the body accepts the slowing down?
Right.
So I've never thought I'd be a yin, but I love yin yoga. It's like the best thing you could do to calm yourself back down.
Yeah, that makes sense. So is that kind of like the gunas then? Like your Raja,
Tamas, and Sattva. So Sattva is that balanced state. Rajas is that irritated, aggressive energy. Tamas is that inertia, that lazy lethargy, you know, and we can kind of fluctuate between one and the other.
Right.
and noticing, first of all, when we're feeling this way and not ignoring it. I think we deal with chronic disassociation as well in our current society, where we just ignore how we feel and the signals that our body is sending us, and why we just get to a point where we cause burnout. And even as a yoga teacher, I've burned myself out because I didn't listen to the signs and the signals. Coming back to my practice, I wanted to talk down to myself. I want to be like, you're better than this. You've been doing this for years. No, I was like, oh, cool. Now I get to enjoy coming back again and again and again. And I think that's the best part about yoga, is that your mat will always be there for you. Right. Doesn't matter if you haven't practiced in over a year, your mat and your practice will always be there for you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. It sounds like it's just kind of like how you choose to perceive it, and choosing one thought over another. I feel like that's a big thing about stress, is sometimes it's just choosing one thought over another, and usually it's leaning more towards gratitude, even if it is something that, like, on the surface you don't want, like, oh, I don't want to have a slammed schedule, but like, this is teaching you something, just looking at it through a different perspective can really change kind of like the signaling and the stress that you're kind of giving yourself.
Well, and it's hard because people are like, okay, I could just be like, okay, don't think that, think something else. What you can do is take it out of the mind, bringing it back into the body. A lot of trauma-informed yoga, which I've done a lot of training in, is getting out of the mind, coming back to the body. So simply putting your hands on your stomach or your chest and feeling yourself breathe for a couple of cycles can take you out of the head and bring you back into the body, because that is the powerful tool here. I mean, we can try and talk ourselves out of anything in our own minds and stay up all night thinking about it. It doesn't help.
Right.
But by bringing it back into the body, noticing how you're breathing, checking in with yourself. Now, those are fundamental tools in our tool belt that we can pull out to help bring us back to balance.
I love it. What about, like, so you've done your 200 hours. You're doing like 1,000 hours, aren't you? Yeah.
So I'm right now a 500-hour teacher. I'm working towards 1,000 hours, which is a 3-year program from a studio called Practice Yoga in Austin. And what it seeks to do is you'll become a yoga therapist. And what yoga therapy is taking what we're talking about, asana, mindfulness practices, breathing practices, the poses, and you work with a client one-on-one. And you're doing rehabilitation for their physical body, but you're also reconstituting their mental and emotional bodies as well. You're offering them tools, strategies that they can use throughout their day. 15 minutes goes so much further than trying to force someone to do an hour and a half of work, because it's not realistic. And just, again, that coming back to meeting people where they are. How can you help support their current state and bring awareness to the things that are not benefiting them and highlighting the things that are benefiting them? So my background is in medicine. I work at an animal hospital. My mom's a nurse. I have a fascination with anatomy and physiology. I think that the human body is amazing, miraculous. I don't know how we got so lucky to be born into these bodies.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part, is like, we are a precious vessel. There is so much we can do with this. And meeting people and working with them one-on-one is just something that I've really, really loved. It also makes me a better public yoga teacher, because I take these tools and techniques that I'm learning from all my mentors, and I distill it down into little bite-sized chunks that I can just sprinkle into my yoga classes. And like, well, I feel so much different now. I don't have to go into why they feel different. They feel it themselves. Your body heals itself. Yeah. Turning on and activating the things that promote healing is a freaking miracle blessing. And once you understand how to do that, it's all yours. It's all yours.
Yeah, I like that. You don't have to like tell people, oh, this is what you're going to experience, and this is the steps to healing. You just experience it in your own way.
Yeah, that's why I love sound healing too. It's like, you don't have to verbalize anything. Same with yoga. You don't have to talk about why you feel better. You don't have to put it into words. Own it, feel it. You created that feeling. You did that on your own. The frequencies of the bowls, yes, they help bring you there. The movement of the body, yeah, it helped to release and dissipate tension, but you did that for yourself.
Right. You
didn't have to ask for a pill. I think that's the power. We take our power back when we realize we can heal ourselves.
Yeah. And I think it's just like getting started. just doing it, like not having expectations, like you said earlier, like there's no trophy, there's no winning, there's no black belt, like nothing. You just get to show up every day as you are. It could be, better, it could be the same, it could, not be the same, but you're just still showing up, I think that's like the win. That sounds kind of cheesy, but it is.
It is. No, it is. Showing up for yourself. If you can't show up for yourself, how can you show up for anybody else?
Yeah.
You know, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
It's all these little things that really let us, like Adrienne and you, but Yoga with Adrienne says, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
You have to fill your own cup up first. And what does that look like for you? And it's going to be different for you than it is for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be different than my mom. It's going to be different than for my brother, And what the cool thing is that yoga was originally intended to be prescription based. We do these practices specifically to your body's constitution. It's not a one size fits all glove. That's why there's so many variations on the poses. That's why there's so many different breathing techniques, because you should be able to kind of curate a program that works for you and then change that along the way.
Yeah. Nice. Tell us more about sound healing. We've got some of our, if you're not watching this on YouTube, we've got some of our gongs and bowls.
So sound healing is an ancient modality, and Katie is a wonderful person to talk more about it, because she's kind of like the first person in Yuma that brought crystal singing bowls here, and my first person that ever gave me a sound bath. Tibetan bowls are, from small villages on the base of Mount Everest in Tibet. That's where these ones are curated from. They're family bowls, so they keep them in the household and they use them for balancing. What it means is that when you hear the sound, it kind of associates with the different energy centers in the body. So each bowl is in tune with a different chakra. And each chakra houses different energetic components to our mental and physical being. So we can talk briefly on the throat chakra, because it's pretty obvious. It's going to govern your ability to speak, but also your ability to listen and the senses of smell and sight. So it kind of cultivates this whole area. When you hear the sounds, you feel the sound coming into you. There's a vibration quality when, at the end of the day, we are all vibration. Everything we experience, the sound you're listening to this podcast, you are pulling in vibration into your eardrum, and that's how you're making sense of what we're talking about. So when you think about us all being vibration, and you think about this concept that this is positive vibration, you are essentially allowing the body to come back into its original state of positive alignment, because we were all born, and we still are, completely whole and in line. The bowls just get all of that external stuff away. And then moving into the meditation component, I think, especially with the crystal singing bowls, so they're made out of quartz crystal. They emit a certain frequency that can sound a little high pitch. Meditation. So a lot of people are like, I can't meditate. I can't turn my head off. My thoughts never stop. The sound that the bowls emit, this frequency that comes out, is so intense, and you feel it all over inside of your brain that you can't think thoughts. So for me, it's another secret passageway into turning off the mind chatter, that what you talked about, that constant monkey mind. The bowls makes the sound, and the gongs and all these different sound instruments are so all-consuming in how you feel that you really can't think. So I love them, because if you're not an experienced meditator, come to a sound bowl class and you will be one.
Yeah. No, I've never done a sound bowl class. I've seen them, like sometimes you'll bring them out, you'll have them at the end, and it's super nice. Like even just that little like piece at the end. So I can only imagine like how taking a full class and then meditating on it, like how helpful that would be.
Yeah, we do one. We call it our alchemy sound ceremony, and it's so many different bowls made of different crystals. So if you're into crystals and gems and all that stuff, you'll totally nerd out, because every bowl is like a alchemy, so a blending of these different crystals. But then we play those, and we play 4 different gongs at the same time, drums. So it's just like full integrative experience of sound. If you like going to concerts, you'll love this experience, because you know that feeling, that goosebumps that you get on your skin where you listen to a song that just like makes your heart lift and you just get so excited. It's like that for an hour. It's amazing. It promotes sleep. It brings you into theta state. So we're usually in beta, which is going to be this awareness, we can speak to each other. Then there's alpha, so that's like your daydreaming, creativity, you know, coming up with a plan. And then there's theta, so that's either a meditative state, a hypnosis state, or a deep dreamlike state. So the sound frequency actually brings you into theta. So if you have issues falling asleep, the sound classes are absolutely wonderful for promoting better sleep, better health, better well-being. I think of it as like being covered in a dust of anxiety, and it just shakes all that stuff off. It's so magical, and I can't recommend it enough. And not only that, it's non-physical. You lay there. You don't have to do anything. You come at the end of the week, because we usually do them on Sunday nights. You get on these comfy blankets, you get yourself all snuggled in, and you let the sound do the work. You don't have to externalize anything. You are completely passively absorbing all you need.
That's awesome. I have to try class, but they're normally on Sundays, or when are they?
They kind of vary throughout the week.
Okay.
So we post them on our schedule. Sundays, yes, we try to do one. I know there's one on 4:00 on Friday night afternoons that incorporates restorative yoga, and you can just kind of catch them throughout the month. You know, we could do more. I would love if we did more. It would be great. But anybody interested in sound healing can message myself or Katie directly, and you can even do private one-on-one sessions or small groups. So like bring your family together, your mom and your sister and your dad. And
I've seen you guys like go to like the fire department and do stuff with their team.
That's so cool. It's been wonderful, especially like fire department. We worked with the juvenile detention center, and these are people that are chronically just on edge. Like even at the fire department, they responded to a call in the middle of a class. Oh, wow. They like had to jump up and get in the truck and run away.
Fight or flight.
They're always on edge. And I asked them, like, what's your sleep quality like? Like, how are you sleeping? They're like, we don't really, because we're just waiting for that bell to ring. We're just waiting to get called into the next thing. And I go, wow, you guys do so much more than we give you credit for. Like, that's a huge service to community, but also they're going to burn out. No pun intended. They're going to find that over time, when you're so stressed out all the time and you're not sleeping, you get your neuroreceptors start to burn out. You change your brain chemistry. You have issues with your home life, with your sleep, with your eating, with your weight. Because like you were saying earlier, nutrition's a big part, but like we are all one organism. This is all working together. So everything that we're taking in and everything we're experiencing is going to affect every different part. I think of it like a rippling effect. You're going to throw that pebble in, and it's just going to go out to the rest of your life. And everybody, but especially our first responder communities, especially, you know, wayward youth that don't know what's going on with their lives, they need more regulation of the nervous system.
I think that for a lot of people, like you'll experience your own healing, or like just be able to kind of get out of like that stress place, whatever is causing you stress, you know. And it's not that you have to like get rid of the stress, it's just how you choose to kind of let it affect you, and find the balance where you're just meeting yourself where you're at. Like, you know, you've got a job that you have to be on high alert for, but you also have a family, you also have a life, you know, and you're not your job, you know, even though like it can be something that you're passionate about, but at the end of the day, you know, we're just people floating on a rock, you know. So but anything else that you kind of wanted to like mention? I want to talk about like studio, like our classes that we offer here, and then like advice that you have for like new teachers, someone like me, or I know we have somebody else who's starting at Studio Y too this month. So like what advice do you have for that?
So we kind of overviewed our little classes here, what we offer. Just know, if you're listening to this, we offer classes 7 days a week, as early as 5:30 in the morning, as late as 7 o'clock at night. They're an hour long, so plan to be out of the house for like 2 hours with commute and everything like that. I always have this mantra I say: you won't regret taking a yoga class, but you will regret not going to a yoga class.
Yeah.
Because you're going to feel different. Doesn't matter what style of yoga it is. Doesn't matter what day of the week it is. You will leave feeling different and more connected and more resilient. I think resiliency is a big part of how I teach, because it's like if you can breathe in chair pose, you can breathe anywhere. Mm-hmm. If you can allow yourself to rest, you can give back so much more when you step off of the mat. So find us on MindBody. There's an app where you can book online. If you're not tech savvy, just show up to the studio. We have paper calendars that you can take home with you. Everybody that works here, everybody that teaches here is so kind and loving. They will show up to help you 100% of the way. Don't ever feel like you can't ask questions. Don't ever feel like you can't say, you know what, I didn't really understand this. Can you explain it to me more? And we would love to talk about it with you. We can also do private sessions. So I do private one-on-one yoga. If a group setting, I understand, is not everybody's jam. Like, I get it. I can work one-on-one just to kind of go over the basics, get that understanding.
Yeah, that'd be a really good thing for people to try.
Oh, it's wonderful. And it's more custom, you know, mm-hmm. It's more of a therapeutic-based approach where it's like, okay, what hurts? What do you want to work towards? What are our goals here? We set up goals and we work towards them over time. And I'm not saying you got to work with me twice and then I'm going to dump you into a yoga class. No, if you want to work one-on-one forever, if you want to find a way to create a home practice that is custom fit to you, that's what I'm here for. To me, that is the biggest reward. I love working one-on-one with people because it gives me the opportunity to just really hold space and guide somebody in a right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like you said, there's a lot of different classes. There's hot yoga, and the hot yoga here isn't like scary, you know, like I've gone where like you're dripping on the mat and it's like, how I didn't know my body could sweat like this. And like, am I going to be okay? And it's an experience for sure to do like a hot yoga class like that. But here it's just like, it's just Yuma, Arizona heat, you know, like you're just kind of like, you're warm, which can be really good for the body, I think, because you're able to get into pose a little bit deeper, you know, because you're warmed up. So I would say it's more like heated yoga.
Yeah, and people are always like, why do hot yoga, especially in Yuma? Mm-hmm. You know, it does it's very detoxifying. You're gonna sweat, but you also have to really focus on your breathing. So to me, it's more of a breathwork class, because if you're not breathing, it's a good way to think about it. You're gonna feel you're gonna feel real irritated. Like you're saying, it helps warm up the muscles, but you're not going to get a deeper stretch just by being in a warm room. You know, if that were the thing, everybody in Yuma would be just Gumby. But what it does is it builds you up to a point where you're safely stretched and warmed. One of my mentors talked about you have to warm a muscle before you can stretch it. He compared it to a ball of silly putty. So if you have a cold ball of clay in your hands, you're not going to be able to pull it to this extension. If you warm it up first in your palm and you get it hot, then you can pull it easier. Then you can create this. So you always want to warm everything. And the way we tailor the classes, it's going to be different every time for a hot yoga. But you're going to kind of build yourself up to come into either a peak pose or a class where you're doing a lot of repetition and you're getting the cardiovascular system working, you are strengthening, and you're building that flexibility gradually over time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, there's the hot yoga classes, yin yoga, you know, like the basics, yoga 101. The paddleboarding yoga, which is a lot of fun.
Yes. That's awesome. Especially if you love being outdoors, especially if you love being on the water. Paddleboard yoga is amazing. And what's great about Lori is that she provides all the supplies. You get the board, a life jacket, an anchor. She walks you through how to use the paddleboard. So if you've never done it before, you're in good hands. She's a lifeguard, so she'll keep you safe. And then you do a beautiful little paddle up the river. You drop an anchor and you do a gentle yoga class. It's nothing crazy. And again, like if you're not comfortable doing it, you don't have to do it. And then, yeah, like we talked about earlier, meditating and just like feeling the water flow underneath you and just like taking that relaxation time. It's so beautiful. We do those on the weekends, so look out for them on the schedule. You do sign up in advance, but everything is taken care of for you. You show up and you have a great time.
Yeah.
Other styles of classes, you know, we do meditation here. We do Reiki and chill, which is more of like a guided meditation, gentle class. So there's a lot of variations on MindBody. There's descriptions, so you know what you're getting yourself into. And then you can always ask an instructor and they'll be really good with helping you. And so finally, so for a new yoga teacher, it's really exciting. So congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a lot about just be your authentic self. You know, you have to treat every person like you've known them forever and that you're so kind and loving. Just give that out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't hold back on that. You never could be nice enough to people. And that to me makes a huge difference with somebody's comfortability. If they show up and you're stuffy and snobby at the front door, they're never going to want to come back.
Right.
If you treat them like this is your house and you can bring them in and offer them water and everything they need to feel supported, you know, that's creating the experience. And then don't be afraid to put your creativity in it. Don't be afraid to add in tidbits of information from really good books. Like I have Deepak Chopra's 7 Spiritual Laws of Yoga here. I've read from this book countless times. This is also a great book if you are beginning your yoga journey and you want to know more about what yoga is. It goes through everything we discussed today, from the philosophy to the breathing practices to the movement practices to meditation to even tidbits of stuff you can take home with you on your mental journey towards stress reduction. So I cannot recommend this enough. Another book is Soul to Soul. So these are just prayers, poems, and stories to end a yoga class. So when people are either at the end of Shavasana or in their fetal position, I like to read one of these. And it just kind of drives home this sense of loving belongingness, this sense of calm and ease in the body. It also helps to fill negative space when you're like, I don't know what to say right now. I'm going to read from this book. Beyond all that, you know, practice the class before you teach it. Mm-hmm. Feel it in your own body so you know what their body's going to feel like. Practice with props, blocks we talked about a little bit, but modification using props is really important. It doesn't matter if you've been doing yoga for 20 years or you're just starting. Props are a big benefit. People think, oh, that's not really yoga. No, you're actually becoming a more advanced practitioner by using props appropriately, whether it's a block or a bolster or a strap or a blanket for protecting your knees, protecting your joints, protecting your ligaments. You know, these are ways that we can deepen our practice by gaining proprioception. I know where my body is in space and time because the block is telling me where it is. Mm-hmm. It's helping me designate that felt sense of being in my body, of where it is, and not just like flailing all over the place. Mm-hmm. So using props, not being afraid to tell people, hey, you don't have to go 100%. You can do this and it will help you out a lot. And then just have fun. Before I teach a class, I always do a little bit of Nadi Shodhana, which is that alternate nostril mm-hmm. breathing. It balances the hemispheres of the brain and it also creates focus. I get nervous still to this day before I teach. You know, you have 20 people staring at you like, what do I do next? And so calming in with a calm mind really, really helps. You know, we can't meet people if we are dysregulated. We can't hold space if we're not in a good headspace. And that's not pressure to perform or to be a certain way, but just, you know, taking time to take a few breaths before you go in to teach. And you're just like, okay. And if you are having a crappy day and you still have to teach, be honest about it. Hey guys, I've had a crap day. We're going to do this today. We're going to do this breath technique because it's going to help me. I hope it helps you. You know, being honest. We don't have to pretend we're perfect. We don't have to pretend we have everything together or that we know every Sanskrit term that was ever written, you know, but just saying, hey, I'm feeling this kind of way. I don't know if y'all are. So this is the type of practice we're going to do. If I don't feel grounded because it's really windy outside, then we're going to do a grounding practice. And it's not because it's about me, but if I'm feeling it in my body, then maybe you're feeling it in your body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I listened to a podcast with, for my vinyasa practice, and then they were interviewing an author of a book called Standing Room Only, and it's about being like that yoga teacher. And what stood out to me was that like when talking to students and teachers, students don't come back to the class because the asana postures and the flow and everything. It's the teacher, you know, and just how they connected with them and how they made them feel at home and how, you know, it was just a good experience for them. You know, it's not necessarily that they understand the best alignment or anything. So like that's something that's kind of like stuck with me, you know, just like how I show up for the students when I come to class.
Yeah. And don't put pressure on yourself to like rewrite a brand new sequence every single time. Be like, oh, they're going to be bored by doing this. I used to think that. I was like, well, I have to do something completely different because I had one girl that was here yesterday and she's going to know we're doing the same thing. No, we're not reinventing the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
This is 5,000 years of asana. You know, this is
Right.
all curated into this moment. But what I'm really trying to say is that A, repetition is the father of learning. It's a Lil Wayne quote. But also B, they're going to understand in themselves in a more intimate way. We do the same poses the same way, like a sun salutation, because you can get to know yourself deeper. You don't have to be wowed and razzles and dazzled every time, you know. It should be more of, oh yeah, I remember this.
Mm-hmm.
I remember how this felt in my body last week when I took this class. I like this pose. Or, you know, this isn't my favorite, but I feel different in it today.
Right.
It's not as hard. So just know that, like, giving them that same practice, that same flow can curate this sense of, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. I'm not confused. Because I've been to yoga classes where I'm confused by what the teacher's having us do, and it is frustrating. It's like, why are you doing this? Even before I was a teacher, I would be like, what?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just confused right now. But coming back to, like, also giving an authentic experience. If I know that, you know, it's the same girl that took my class last week and we're doing the same thing, I'll say, hey, guess what? We're going to do the same thing we did before. So feel free to maybe explore a little bit more that you liked, or change something that, you know, wasn't really sitting with you well last time, but just giving you the heads up, we're going to do something similar. And usually they're like, oh, awesome. Cool. I wanted to revisit that pose anyway. Or, oh yeah, I wanted to try something a little bit different this time.
Yeah, they're not gonna be like, oh man.
Yeah, they're gonna be like, oh, I'm bored, I'm going home now, you know, like, oh, yawn. Like, no, they love it. And like, to me, I have a very, like, I'm kind of protocol driven, thanks a lot, medical industry, but like, I like to start with a seated meditation, and then a warm up, and then a sun salutation, and then we get more into the intricacies of where we're working towards today. But people like predictability. They like to know a little bit about what this experience is going to be like for them before they get into it. And then you create trust.
Yeah.
This is all about trust, right? I want to trust you to teach me the right way. I want to trust you to bring me into a place where I feel confident and safe in what I'm doing, above all else.
Yeah. Well, thanks. That was really helpful. Like, I feel excited and nervous at the same time, but I know that, like, that really is the same feeling, you know? So it's just...
I love that you said that, because like, this whole summer has been really up and down, and finding that balance between anxiety and excitement, and knowing that it's the same feeling. It's just how we're associating with it and leaning more towards, like, this is positive excitement, not this is anxiety-ridden fear, you know, and pulling more towards it. No, this feeling inside of me right now, I'm excited. I'm not scared.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm excited to take, or to teach, and then to take more classes here, and just see where this whole journey goes, you know, like, because I have only been doing yoga for almost like 3 years, really. And recently, I, you know, just pulled the trigger, decided to get my 200 hours, and haven't even finished. I'm already teaching. You know, I think that's going to be a good experience for me as I'm getting my 200 hours to get that hands-on experience. And, you know, I've already been coaching, health coaching and all that. So I think I kind of can use that to bring, like, that energy of guiding and collaboration when it comes to teaching. So, but, yeah, no, this was super, super fun to do. I think, like, just talking to you makes me excited to teach yoga. I hope that people who are like watching this or listening to this are excited to come try out the studio and see what it's about. Just give it a shot, you know, like, there's no expectations, there's no right or wrong way to do it, you know, and just reach out, you know, if you have questions, if you're, you know, anxious, like, how can we help you to make it something that you're more comfortable doing and can keep showing up for. But thank you for doing this with me. I can't wait to share this with everybody. So come check out our classes. You can find Studio Y on Instagram. You can go to the link, look at the schedule. They usually post the schedule at the beginning of the month, and then every week, like, what those classes are going to be. So you can reach out to me or Alexis if you have any questions.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening.